back for episode 4 of The Playbook. I am co-sports editor Sienna here with other co-sports editor Colin and assistant sports editor Jacob Moreno. How are we feeling today?
You know, it's another day back on The Playbook, so how can it be a bad day? We're here. We're together. We're going to talk about some really fun Temple sports.
Getting deja vu?
Yeah, I mean, exactly what Colin said. I'm just so excited to be here and talk about Temple University athletics.
It sounded so insanely sarcastic.
How are you, Sienna?
I am doing fine. I'm going to be eyeing this fly down the entire time.
Yeah,
but
me too.
we have apparently a guest on the podcast today, this fly. All right, let's get it started with Temple football. So since we last spoke, Temple started conference action with a win, a 27-21 win against UTSA, and then just this past weekend, a 32-31 loss against Navy. Against UTSA, it was a really, really slow first half. They trailed by 11 points at halftime, and head coach Casey Keeler told his players in the locker room that this was the first time he's ever been embarrassed to be their coach. Evan Simon said that's exactly what they needed to hear, and they scored 21 third-quarter points to come away with the win. What did you guys see during that game?
I mean, it was just a slow first half. Like, they were down 14-3. The offense couldn't get anything going, and it was concerning for a game that we all felt like Temple could have and should have won against UTSA. That first half was concerning, and in the second half they just turned it on the offensive side of the ball. But the biggest takeaway for me was, I think going into it, we were all concerned about the rushing defense because of how it's been the last few years. And you looked on the other side of UTSA, they had Robert Henry Jr., who was the second leading rusher in the country at the time, and they held him to 42 rushing yards. Like, that is an incredible feat for this football team, and was pretty crucial in the win last week against UTSA. And just a win against UTSA that kind of makes you feel like this program's heading on the up and up. Like, you were down 14-3 at halftime the last couple of years. That's a game that you just it's a loss. Like, you just kind of chalk it up as a loss. But I mean, clearly what Casey Keeler said resonated with the players. They went out and played really well in the second half, and picked up a huge momentum shifting win to open conference play.
Yeah, and Colin and Sienna, to your points, like Temple's defense against Henry was so good that UTSA started to rotate running back Will Henderson III just to try to give the defense different looks. But I think something that also needs to be talked about is how they kind of, like you said, Colin, how they started off slow, but that eventually kind of found their way back and obviously got the win. But against Navy, which we'll obviously talk about more, they really did get off to a pretty electric start. They were leading, I believe, 17-7 at halftime, and their offense really played a complete game from start to finish. Obviously, there were other issues, but that's the biggest thing I kind of noticed in these past two games, just kind of the contrast and the progression.
Yeah, it seemed like the two games were kind of flipped. UTSA had a really slow first start, and then Navy had a strong first start from Temple, and then the defense kind of faltered a little bit in the second half. Temple, they missed their first field goal attempt against Navy, and Navy scored on their first drive. But after that, Navy punted for the rest of the first half, while Temple scored on all but one of the first half drives. Colin, what did you see in the difference from the first to the second half against Navy?
I mean, it really didn't boil down to what Temple was doing. It more boiled down to what Navy did. And Navy has been a football team that historically runs the triple option, which is basically just you run the ball down the other team's throats and relentlessly. You just don't stop running the ball. And in that first half, Navy kind of didn't do that. They were trying to pass the ball. They thrive on getting to second and short, third and short, and easily being able to either fullback dive or halfback toss or quarterback option it for a first down. Navy had themselves in kind of second and longs, third and longs that benefited Temple and forced those punts, and Temple took advantage on offense and built that 17-7 lead. And then that second half, Navy just went back to its roots and just ran the ball over and over and over with Blake Horvath, who just killed them on the ground. He had 154 versus 155 rushing yards in the second half, including, the end of that game was kind of tough with if they should have scored or not on their second to last offensive drive with Jay Ducker, or should you take in knees and kick the field goal. They decided to score, which backfired, as on 4th and 1 from midfield, Blake Horvath went 51 yards for a touchdown, through the ensuing 2-point conversion to Alex Texa, and that was kind of that from there. But it was really just kind of Navy going back to its roots on offense and running the ball. And Temple was down its 2 starting safeties, down Sekou Chroma on the defensive line, and they just kind of withered Temple down on the ground. The offense did everything it could to keep up with 518 yards, and Evan Simon had a career high in yards. But in the end, it was just Navy having a better rushing attack and ultimately just being able to sneak away in that second half.
Yeah, now looking for Temple goes on the road for its next 2 games. It's facing Charlotte on October 18th, and Charlotte has not yet won a conference game. Same with Tulsa, their opponent the following week. And Charlotte's the worst in the conference. What do you guys, what are your predictions for the game, and what can Temple benefit from maybe playing against a lower team?
If there has ever been a get-right game for Temple, it is Charlotte. They are not just one of the worst teams in the conference. They are arguably one of the worst teams in the country. Like, their starting quarterback's out for the year with an ACL injury. They are 1-5. They're one of the worst scoring defenses. Can't run the ball, can't throw the ball. So if there's any game for Temple to really bounce back from Navy, it's this game. They just have to make sure that the Navy loss is flushed. Like, you can't be carrying that into the Charlotte game. I know Evan Simon said post-game that 24-hour rule to flush the games, but this one, the loss to Navy, might take a little bit longer. You really have to make sure that, that's not hanging around against Charlotte, because that's a team you should beat. And then same goes for Tulsa as well, a couple weeks out. I think when we were looking at kind of our predictions here, I think we all picked these 2 games as wins. This team can still easily make a bowl game. But I think in order for that to happen, these 2 games, you should win these games right here. And that these 2 games are going to go a long way to making a bowl game. Again, Charlotte is again, get right week for Temple. They should cruise by Charlotte, in my opinion. And then Tulsa as well should be another win. I know they're both road games. They haven't won a road conference game in, I think, 3 or 4 years. But if there's any chance to do it, it's these next 2 weeks.
And to kind of build off your point, it is a sports cliche to say this, but, like, you consider this 32-31 loss. I mean, Navy, I believe, is first in the American. And it's like, if you can hang with them and almost win, like, it came down to, obviously, like you said, a 51-yard rush. And if you can hang with them, you can kind of hang with anybody in the conference. And, given the fact that Charlotte and Tulsa are 2, lower-tier teams, Temple should be able to pull off the win. So, yeah.
Yeah, I agree. I think Temple definitely should win these next 2 games. I think it'll, especially, like you said, there's still a possibility of them making a bowl game. But I think that possibility gets a lot more difficult if they lose even just one of these games.
Mm-hmm.
Do you guys have anything else to add about football?
I think someone that kind of got lost in the plot a little bit just because Temple lost is Kajaya Halloween. He had 146 yards on 9 receptions, and he was just such a reliable threat, especially in the medium-sized gains that Evan Simon completed. And I'm kind of curious to see how that will continue to progress, considering, JoJo Bermuda is also in the fold. So the more passing options the Owls have, the better. And so, yeah.
Absolutely. He's been extremely impressive this year, especially for a guy that's still kind of learning the position after switching from quarterback a couple years ago.
All right, switching from football, let's get into the non-revs. Let's start with field hockey. Since we last talked, they had a 3-0 win against Quinnipiac. Is that how you pronounce it?
Quinnipiac.
Quinnipiac.
Quinnipiac?
I'm gonna...
I've said Quinnipiac, too, to be fair.
That makes me feel better.
There are some eyes in there, Sienna.
I was gonna say I'm blaming it on me not growing up here, but then Jacob said the same thing, so I fear I can't use that excuse anymore. And then, so they have the 3-0 win against them, and then a 1-0 loss to UConn, and a 6-0 win against Lock Haven. The field hockey team is currently 2-2 in Big East play, with only three conference games remaining. What did you guys see during those last 3 games?
I mean, it was a really tough loss to UConn, but UConn's always going to be, a tough team to play. You remember that was a rematch of the Big East Championship from last year, which also was a 1-0 loss. So, it's always a tough team to play. Quinnipiac was a really good, chance to pick up another conference win and, keep pace in conference. They are 10-2 right now, but what matters is the conference record. They're 2-2 with 3 left. Got to be in that top 4 to get down to, I think it's at Liberty this year. So you got to be in that top 4. And then the win against Lock Haven, we just kind of talked about get right games. It was a chance for Temple to kind of get right, and they put up 6 goals, got a lot of playing time for some younger players as well. Some encouraging things from the offensive side of the ball. Michelle Batiste still wasn't super pleased after the win due to what she believes was they could have won by even more. Overall, you continue to see good things from this field hockey team, but it's going to be important because I think like Old Dominion and Liberty are coming up on their schedule. Those are going to be the kind of the 2 biggest tests for them, 2 biggest games for them. They can beat up on Lock Haven, they can beat up on Quinnipiac, all that good stuff. But what matters is if you can compete with Liberty, Old Dominion, UConn. So I think we continue to see encouraging things and growth from freshmen and sophomores who didn't play a lot. So a lot of good stuff from the field hockey team still.
Yeah, you kind of mentioned their Big East schedule a little bit. They are currently sitting at 4th with, you mentioned, the top 4 teams make it to the conference, but 2 of their remaining 3 Big East games are against Old Dominion, who is currently 3rd in the conference, and then Liberty, who is 1st in the conference. What do you think needs to happen for Temple to play strong against those 2 opponents and hopefully make it to the Big East tournament again?
They just have to. It really just comes down to playing their brand of field hockey, like really playing well on offense. Kind of getting out in front, finding the open player, pushing the ball upfield, and then being disciplined on defense, and not kind of getting distracted. And because a big concern for Michelle Batiste has been the youth of her program, especially on the back end. There's a lot of youth back there now, and so it's just making sure that they stay grounded. And it's just playing. She's always preached play Temple field hockey. It's just being able to do that, and you're going to be able to at least be in the games against Old Dominion. Temple beat both these teams last year, so they've proven they can do it. They can do it again this year. The team's a little bit younger, but there is still evident talent on this roster, and there's no reason they can't go to Old Dominion or Liberty and pick up a win.
Now switching to volleyball. Last time we spoke, they had just gotten swept by Tulane, snapping their 5-match winning streak, and now they're on a 5-match losing streak. Temple in the past couple of years has struggled in conference play. They were hoping and they felt really confident that wasn't going to happen again this year, but it seems like that's not the case. They had a 3-1 loss to USF. They were swept by FAU and Charlotte, and then they had a 3-2 loss to ECU. So they're kind of in a little slump right now. They do have some injuries that they're dealing with. Katie Hickey, their middle blocker, she's not their primary middle blocker. Alyssa Finister is, but still Katie Hickey has been really crucial in games this season. But she has a boot on her foot. I can't remember which foot right now, but I'm not sure when she'll get back. And then libero Claudia Rivera, she has a concussion, so she's been out the last couple games. Not sure when she'll return either. So that's definitely hurting Temple.
I mean, like you said, they've had conference struggles in the past few years, and it looks to be the case again. But one thing that's been consistent for them is the play of Leah Harper, Christiana Green, Olivia Hummel, and Alyssa Finister. Those 4 have really just been a really great source of offense. It's just more so about being consistent because in 3 of their 5 losses, they were swept, I believe. So I guess if they can just kind of refine that momentum while, keeping the attack offensively, maybe they can bounce back.
Yeah, I agree. I think they just kind of gotta find their groove again because they had a really, really strong start to the season. And while watching the games, like they're competing really hard. They're just like being outmatched a little bit for these losses. So I think they just kind of gotta find their groove again. Kind of figure out how to play without Katie Hickey and Claudia Rivera. It's a really unfortunate time in Claudia Rivera. She just kind of got that that sole libero role and then out with a concussion. Definitely hurts the Owls. But yeah, coming up they have a rematch against FAU and USF, which Temple took one set off USF, which was definitely very promising. They were the reigning champs last year. Coming up, they have a rematch against FAU and USF. Temple did take a set off USF, which was promising as they won the conference last year. But I think they just kind of got to figure out how to get back in their groove for them to be able to bounce back in conference play. Right. Now let's jump over to the soccers. Both soccer teams are still struggling a little bit, but let's start with men's soccer. They are coming off a 3-1 loss to Florida Atlantic, a 1-0 loss to Penn, and a 1-0 loss to Tulsa. They still have not won a conference game this season, nor have they scored more than one goal in a game yet this season. What are you guys seeing out on the field that's maybe kind of like stunting them from being able to break out?
I mean, I think it's something that is kind of standing out, and a big kudos to our men's guy, Charles Erb, who's kind of talked about this, they've really struggled. I mean, defense hasn't been the issue, but they've struggled with like restart goals and set piece goals, kind of giving up those goals off of either corner kicks, free kicks, penalty kicks. And, you're losing 1-0 or 2-1 or something, and, those goals kind of make all the difference. So, I mean, that's something that maybe stunting them. But I feel like we've been saying it for, 3 straight episodes now, that this team's, the offense just can't score. They just can't get anything going. And the goalkeepers, Diego Dauzier, and now even Preston Neal of late, have really been stepping up and playing really well in goal. And the defense is doing kind of everything it can to keep this team in ball games. And the offense just hasn't helped it, and it was at the point where we kept talking about, okay, maybe this team can make a run, It feels like it's almost too little too late now for them to go on that miraculous run back into the conference tournament.
I mean, we talked about it, I believe last episode, because I think every non-rev is kind of at their mid-season point, and offense, like you guys both said, has been a real focal point, and last 2 losses, they've been shut out in 1-0 games, so it's just yes, their defense and goalkeepers have been amazing, but eventually, with such a heavy usage defensively, they're going to get tired and wear down. And we kind of saw that in their loss to Florida International. I believe they let up 3 goals in the first half. So that's also a concern if the offense doesn't get started. So, yeah, they have 4 games remaining to kind of make something happen and qualify for the American tournament.
I mean, for me, it's also you kind of look at the end of the season for these non-rev teams, especially ones that may be out of contention. Now, I don't know off the top of my head the clinching scenarios for Temple, but these are kind of games where you want to see your younger players continue to take strides on the field in hopes of them coming back next year and building off of that. I feel like we kind of said the same thing last year. Sienna and I, when we were on, you and I were on this last year, kind of talking about women's soccer, volleyball, seeing them end strong and kind of seeing those players kind of step up the younger players. So it's really just kind of hoping to see Temple gain some of these young players get some more reps down the stretch from this men's soccer team to try to build on a little bit of momentum they can carry into next year, assuming they come back to Temple. Guys like Diego Dauzier, or Nathan Brown out in the midfield, just some guys like that. You kind of hope to see some more strides from to carry into next year.
Jumping over to women's soccer, kind of in a similar boat. They're coming off 3 losses: 1 loss to North Texas, 2 loss to ECU, and 2 loss to Charlotte. And they also only have 3 games remaining. They're going to be faced up against the first and the second in the conference, which is really, really tough. Tough way to end the season, but just kind of what have you been seeing from this team?
I mean, Sienna, you kind of said it. In a way, these teams are kind of identical to each other in terms of having solid defenses, but the offenses just cannot really produce on a consistent basis. And they were shut out in their last 3 games. And you look at this team on a 5-game losing streak. They're 0-7 in the conference and 0-9 in away games. And, at this point, I don't really know the clinching scenarios either for this team. But it's just their next 2 games are on the road. So, I don't know. I think at this point, like Colin said, it's just kind of in these last few games, kind of just trying to deploy your younger players more, kind of get them more reps to maybe prepare for next season. But I don't know. Maybe they could make the tournament. I just don't have that off the top of my head.
You kind of mentioned their lack of offense. I was at the game against Charlotte, and I kind of asked head coach Chris Shaw after the game just kind of what he's looking for going ahead. And his answer was score goals, period. And I was yeah. And then he kind of elaborated a little bit, and he said that whenever any of the Temple players get the ball, their first instinct is to play negative and go backwards instead of forwards, instead of immediately going on that attack. And I think it's really hurting them. But he told me, he's I've been saying this all season, and they just still haven't been able to. And then Jacob, yeah, you mentioned they're 0-9 on road games, and their next 2 are road games, including the Memphis game, who is currently the number 1 seed in the conference.
Also top 10 nationally, I'm pretty sure.
Also top 10 nationally. What are your thoughts on just the rest of the season for this team?
I just think this I just want to see. I know they're playing 2 of the top teams in the conference, but just win a conference game to end the year. I mean, I think they're approaching 40 straight conference losses at this point, and that's kind of a stretch. As much as players and coaches will say they aren't thinking about it, it's something that kind of lives in the back of your head. And so just trying to kind of get that monkey off their back and getting that out of their heads and winning a conference game to end the year could go a long way to like kind of morale and maybe players sticking around and kind of a positive approach to next season. Getting that out of the way so you don't have to think about it for what would I guess be like a 4th straight year. That's just kind of what I'm looking for. And then Jacob kind of hit on it. Just keep trying to get young players developed. They have so many freshmen, Valentina Bitterwolf especially, and just kind of don't just kind of lay down and die. Like keep I know they're obviously not going to do that. Just keep competing. Try to pick up a conference win.
All right. Well, that is all we had on this episode.
You can find all of our coverage on Instagram at ttn.sports and all of our coverage on Twitter /X on ttn_sports.
You can find all of our coverage on temple-news.com. That's temple-news.com.